Welcome back, everyone, to the Layman's Law School, where, in this case, 3 little hillbilly lawyers.
I think Vic's moved past that.
I guess,
we
yeah,
still are
yeah.
hillbillies, but I take that back. He did capture squirrels in the back of his Tesla.
Yep.
Which
yeah,
is a weird
yeah.
look.
They're being raised on the polo grounds.
Yeah.
What's left of them.
What's left?
Yeah, what a weird mix.
What a weird
I
mix.
captured squirrels, and they're
in a
being
Tesla.
raised on the polo grounds.
And he carried it in a Tesla.
Okay.
That's kind of what you are, Vic. You're the mix of young and old.
Yeah.
You're up on the high tech, but then you might not be able to work it.
True.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to interrupt our normal programming to actually have a very, very special guest, the great and powerful Victor Hawk, my father, mentor, and we're going to ask him a bunch of questions about his career. He's had a long, storied, and exemplary career as an attorney here in Augusta, Georgia. I've learned a lot from him, and my co-host Reed has learned a lot from him. Been working with him for years and years and years, and we're going to sort of give you a glimpse of sort of what's going on in his life. The segment's going to be called "War Stories and Words of Wisdom" from Victor Hawk.
And I think some of the things that we can talk about too, Chase, are the differences in not necessarily the law, but the court and the court system from when you started practicing and now.
Oh God, it's just light years.
I mean, I'll start.
Wait.
You got one?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We have to start it off the way we always started off, as a good week. Okay,
me and Dick already got into it a little bit.
That's right.
But there was one I wanted Vic to bring up, and I don't know what happened, but it was the spittoons in some county.
Oh yeah, Jefferson County.
Jefferson County.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, there was a famous sheriff in Jefferson County, Zolly Compton. He was the man in Jefferson County. And at that time, when you tried a case in Jefferson County, there were spittoons all around the courtroom because Zolly liked to chew. So I was representing one of multiple defendants. And I noticed Zolly would sit over there in a bench away from the tables from where the lawyers and the defendants were. And when they were picking the jury, he'd either nod his head yes or he'd say no. And then the prosecutor would do exactly what Zolly indicated.
Right.
And then I noticed that Zolly put a chew of tobacco in. And so I got to thinking, he's calling all the shots.
Right.
So we need to be near Zolly. So it was enough defendants and enough lawyers. I said, there's not enough room here at this one table for all of us. Me and the client will move over there next to Zolly. He's the sheriff. And so because I had learned to chew tobacco in law school so I could stay away to study, I put in a chew of tobacco, and me and Zolly spent the whole time spitting into the same
Just bonding.
Just bonding. And all 3 of those other defendants were found guilty, and mine walked with Zolly right out of that courtroom.
Yeah. Did they teach you that? What class was that in law school where they taught you to chew tobacco with the local sheriff?
Right.
Well, it's what we would all call good Southern common sense. You figure out the lay of the land, and you try to put yourself on the high ground.
Okay.
That's right.
So,
well, let's go back a little bit further than Zolly. I mean, what year is this? What are we talking about with Zolly?
Zolly's probably 82 to 86.
Oh, this is
around there a long time ago.
This is a while back. But let's talk about going to law school. What sort of inspired you to sort of go to law school? What made you want to be a lawyer?
Well, I always wanted to be a doctor.
And you are a doctor of the law.
That's right.
I remind Whitney all the time
too. I say that we're just not pretentious enough to have to call us doctor.
Yeah, that's right.
Like a school board
Yeah,
official.
That's right. I was at the University of Georgia in my first chemistry class, and for some reason, I got on the next to the last row. And I don't know if y'all know anything about University of Georgia chemistry classes, but there's generally 300 in there. And I'm on the next to the last row. And I'm way up high. I'm like watching the University of Georgia football game from the upper deck. And the professor's about this high, maybe 3 inches, 4 inches high. And there's this huge screen on the wall where he's writing all these chemistry notations down and things that we need to learn. And about halfway through that course, I said, I really don't want to be a doctor. I think I want to be a lawyer.
So just
because I wanted a good living. I wanted to be able to help people and that kind of thing. And so it was only 3 solid months in a chemistry class at the University of Georgia that convinced me I wanted to be a lawyer.
Right.
So what was the next step? You know, you convinced yourself you want to be a lawyer. You apply. Do you take a LSAT? Or they have LSAT
Sure.
at that time? Yeah.
Sure.
How did that go?
It went as well as I could go.
Yeah. Well, I know that it's a lot different now. I can tell you, just, even from, what was it? You know, it's been, 20 years, I guess, since I've taken it. And even then, my dad, you know, being a lawyer, I didn't prepare for it. I didn't even know what it was. Dad said, oh no, you just go take it.
Sure.
And I did and performed miserably. Yeah. And so now you don't get to drop it. You have to average them together. And in your time, that's kind of what you did. You didn't study for it. You just went and took the test.
Right. And I got the same feeling that you just described. And so I got on the waiting list at Georgia, waiting list at Mercer. Then I got accepted to Cumberland School of Law in Birmingham, Alabama, which is Sanford University. And a number of our local judges and local lawyers went to the same school. It's a trial school. And they said, you have 3 days to accept your seat. Well, it only took me 3 hours. I accepted my seat. I loaded everything that we had on a Volkswagen. We had a table, 2 chairs, and a mattress. And we were, you know, we didn't look too safe going down the road, but we made it to Birmingham. And luckily, all the families in that cul-de-sac realized we didn't have squat.
Right.
And they would just give us all their discarded furniture and stuff. And within a month or 2, we were fully furnished and up and going. Nice. Everybody had a bed.
Somewhere to at least lay your head, right?
That's right.
What? Oh gosh, what was I going to ask you about the law school? So did they have the Socratic method, and did they have? I know that when Dad went, he went to Mercer, they had a mandatory fail rate. Mm-hmm. So if you had 100 people, 33, no matter how good you did, you're compared to the other students, and 33% would be gone.
Yeah.
Is that how it worked at that time too?
Same way. They would tell you to look left, look right. One of you's not going to be here after the first semester. Same thing. I do have a funny story to tell you. I went to my first torts class, and we're about maybe a third of the way through. And you know how they call on you and ask you questions about cases. And it was the one that involved intentional infliction of mental distress. It was only 2/3 of a page.
Vic, me and Chase have talked about this a lot. It's just they kill you with that in law school, and then you get in the real world, you're like,
this never happens.
This doesn't occur.
Yeah,
that's right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So it was torts, and this professor was a great professor. He was very eccentric. He would never look up when he walked around the law school, but he was brilliant and a great professor. You could learn from him.
What was his name?
So
do you remember his name?
Yeah, Hardy.
Professor Hardy.
Yeah. So anyway, he calls on me in this little case, and I stood up, and he asked me questions for 50 minutes. I couldn't answer one single question. And this other student, other SOB in the class, I know. So, it was just embarrassing as it could be. And finally he said, Mr. Hawk, you can just sit down. I said, okay. So that keyed me in. There's no way I was going to be embarrassed like that before. So I was uber prepared every single time. Never call on me. He'd go down the road to me and then skip. And go all the way down the road to me and then skip. Went through 2 semesters of that. We're 1 week away from final exams. Comes down to me. He doesn't skip me this time. So he calls on me. So I stood up. And he said, Mr. Hawk, stand up. I said, standing up. I'm already doing that. So
you're a short man.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
So I stood up in the desk. All right. And then he asked me question after question. I answered every one of those questions. And then the bell rang. And then he said he was going to dismiss the class. I said, "Oh, no, no, no. Do you want to know what the restatement of torts says too?" And he said, "No, I'm done with you." And I said, "All right,
Yeah.
good, we're good."
Proved your point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the worst to the best. Those,
Well, from the worst to relief. That's for sure. I have some measure of confidence after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. I think we've all been embarrassed in law school. I think that's a rite of passage.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yep,
That's
and or embarrassed ourselves.
Sure.
Been embarrassed, but I
Right,
had a very similar experience in torts where I was certain that there was a tort here. 100% certain that this was a tort. It basically involved them ringing a bell. This guy rung this bell. It caused this person to have panic attacks and had like actual heart palpitations. And the doctor had gone to the bell ringer and said, "Hey, can you not do this? This person lives it." And the guy says, "If that was my mother and that stuff was going on and that, I would ring the bell anyway, and I'm going to ring the bell. I don't care what happens." All right. And
Was
I'm
it what was it like Salvation Army type thing?
No. This was it had to do with a town, and people set their clocks by it, and it starts talking about the social.
I got you.
It was the point of teaching the core of that case in the course is to teach you the social utility is sometimes weighed into public policy as to when you can bring a claim of some sort. And I said no, that like there was too much animosity between the two to where that guy was going to ring that bell and he didn't give shit what happened to the other, and he was doing it like he was gleefully doing this, right? And I said, all right, and I got into it with my professor, and we just so happened to have a high school class visiting the class, and it happened exactly how yours happened. We were going back and forth, and she was like, "You know what, Mr. Hawk, let's just sit down and let's talk about this after." And I was like, "Well, we should talk about it right now because I would take that case, and I would take that case, and I would win." And he's like, and I think that this case is wrong, 100%. She's like, "Thank you, Mr. Hawk. Moving on." I was so annoyed by that.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Well, I have my story was, essentially yours. I wasn't prepared. And then I found out, after the first semester or whatever it was, what you're talking about in class is really isn't on the test. So once I figured that out, I just didn't care. They called on me, "Mr. Sanders, can you do it?" "I don't know. What's the answer to this?" "Don't know. I'm an idiot, blah, blah, blah." And then I studied for the test. So I got over my embarrassment after the first one.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone goes through that at one time or another.
Absolutely.
One time or another.
Do you feel like law school prepared you for practice?
No.
I agree.
Not even close. Law school prepares you to know the law, and they don't prepare you to deal with the public, factual distinctions, and you have no idea how to file a complaint. How are you going to serve somebody?
Well, that's changed a little bit over the years. I'll let you know.
Yeah, well,
they learn from you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so.
Well, it's still the big missing key, in my opinion. I guess when where you came out as a solo practitioner and then had partners, and now we're 7-8 attorney law group, but they don't teach anything about how to run a business and financials and
we are so thankful to have you help me and Chase.
That's right.
But I mean, you kind of sent out, they teach you how to think, how to interpret the law, but you got to figure out how to run a business on your own. I mean, that's just, and that's the scary part of it.
Yeah. And we see a lot of the lawyers in the graveyards who, I'm talking about graveyards of their profession, because they don't know how to run the business.
Right.
Could be brilliant lawyers.
Brilliant lawyers can't make a dime.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, you do have to have multiple sort of hats, coming out of school. And actually, I'm working with you since I was 16. Yeah. I watched the development of all those hats. You're great dealing with people. You're great dealing with the law and actually making arguments and stuff like that. And I think that's been the hallmark of your success is that you can communicate with people and make your point. And you work out, like, this is what the law says, and this is the way the facts fit into them. And you tell your story to shape what you want for your client, and you're brilliant at it. It just the other stuff has been a little bit of a learning curve.
It's been it was so good. This is probably right after Reed came to work with me that we actually had a savings account in the law, because it was an ongoing battle to be ready for payroll.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times I didn't get paid because I wasn't managing. I was charging too little, not taking any security. My brother thought I was crazy, and I should have never taken the same. I took some cases that I should have never taken. The same people that I should have never taken end up being the ones that would complain to others or complain to the bar when you really tried to help them. And then you have to respond to the bar and show what the case was and show why this person has got some personal problems, either mentally or physically, and they just don't have a grasp of the facts. And I feel sorry for them, and I want to help them. I want to help them all, but sometimes you just can't. No matter what you do. It was hard for me to say no.
It's very difficult now. It's Chase and me have the same issue, and it's because for people who don't know you, you're one of the kindest person I've ever met, and we essentially have built our firm, in that model. And so it's very difficult, and Chase is probably the best at it, is just saying, look, there's nothing I can do for you. If I do, it's going to make it worse. And that's very difficult for me to do, and I know it is for you to do, because you want to help them.
So the only way that I'm able to do that so easily is I look at and think about my employees, and I have a little boat, and I can hold 20 some odd people, right? And somebody's asking me to pull in another 10 or 15 to help, right? But that's going to sink the boat. And all the people that I'm responsible for are going to drown. And so I have to look at it that way, because I am torn by some of these stories, because they are difficult stories. But if there's not something I can make a difference on, definitely not going to charge a fee. Definitely not going to get involved, because it's they need to know, and that's part of our job, is to be objective, to tell them the truth, and this is a terrible truth. It stinks, but there's nothing that can be done under these circumstances. But
that's one of the best things that I've learned, is that you do them more good by telling them that you can't help. You really do. They move on. They move on with their life. So
well, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen throughout your career, as far as how the courts are run, how cases are run, trials versus no trials, all that?
I would say first that our judiciary today is much more diverse, is much more open to having and avoiding conflicting views. I know our judiciary, when I first started practice, you had to have one of 7 family names, because there were generations of lawyers involved, and one family name on a given calendar would have 25 of the 28 cases. And one lawyer with a certain name would get all the continuances for next to nothing. There was such a history of de facto nepotism that it was difficult to be different. I've been ordered to jail more than once, but I learned a lot because of it. In other words, I tried to be the good person, do the right thing, help everyone I could. And if I felt that even if a judge was mistreating the person, I developed a lack of fear of being held in contempt. Each time I was held in contempt, the judge reversed himself within an hour, because I hadn't done anything wrong to justify what he did. And I also learned that there are different ways to protect your client other than raising Cain in the courtroom. And one of the first trials I did, and I had a lot of success with, there was a judge who was, again, a member of this certain family name, said, Vic, come up here. And so I went up there, and he said, you can call me a SOB up here, but you can't call me an SOB out in the open courtroom. So I learned that when I really wanted to be confronted with a judge on behalf of the client, I would ask to go up to the bench. And that's where you see on TV, lawyers go up there and have a
sidebar.
Yeah, sidebar, sneaky conversation, whatever.
Right.
That's where serious conversations can take place.
Yeah.
And the benefit of it was that the judge knew that I was not going to allow someone to be run over. And then the Court of Appeals would know there was a written record of exactly what occurred without the public knowing and without the judge being embarrassed.
Yeah.
So I learned to handle that very delicately. A lot of times when I was really mad when I was young, I said, I object.
Yeah.
Well, the way it reads on paper is, I object.
Right.
Just nothing to it. And so I learned to do things like stand up, say quietly, I object. Can I approach? And then if they wouldn't let me approach, I would tell them that what I'm going to do may affect the result of the whole trial.
Right.
And then they said, come up here and let me talk to you. So that's changed. And now we have a very mixed and reflective view of our cultural community. Not necessarily a set of judges who are tied to various families throughout the community.
Sure.
We started, when I started off, I guess there were 40, 50 lawyers, and now there's 300 or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like on the bench, when you started, how many of the judges were white males?
All.
Every single one of them. Yeah.
Right. And with certain last names.
Right. And the lawyers that were in the courtroom.
Yeah.
All male, white males.
Yeah.
Yeah. And today,
Jack Ruffin was the first one, African American lawyer.
Right.
And he taught me a lot. I have a lot of respect for him, but he was one of those that taught me how to be much more openly civil yet confrontive.
Well, I could tell you, I mean, you're talking about you being young and screaming and shouting objection and all that, but what I've learned is from the 15 or 16 years I've been, well, I don't know, it might have been longer than that now, but however long it's been, is to stay calm. And so, and I have gotten better and better over the years, and I've seen Chase getting better and better with it too. And when you're in the courtroom, you don't have to scream and shout.
That's right.
If the judge completely disagrees with it, you say that's okay, and you make sure you put it on the record. You say it very calmly. You say it quietly, because you're not going to make the judge change his mind, but you got to get that record right.
So proud of you, Reed. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. No matter how much you want. Another thing that at one time we had such an abusive chief judge, he would jump on the young lawyers, and I finally got enough courage, I guess. He was jumping on a young lawyer for making a common mistake that young lawyers made, and I said, I object. And then
you weren't involved in the case.
I wasn't involved.
Okay. Wait, I said, where were you?
I was in another case. I was in the courtroom at a calendar call, and the judge was just really berating this lawyer, and the courtroom was full of people. He was embarrassing the lawyer. And I said, I object. And I said, every young lawyer's made that mistake. That's not a big deal at all. You fix it by doing so and so and so and so. And I object. And then the judge said, oh, Mr. Hawk, you want to get involved now. I said, well, you shouldn't treat a young lawyer like that.
Right.
And then he said, well, I think I'll find you in contempt. I said, well, go ahead. I mean, I really don't care. I'll pay whatever you say that I should pay. I'll be respectful to the court. but I think you should be respectful to this
Sure.
young lawyer.
A fellow
Because
member of the bar.
Right,
I
he
mean,
doesn't know any better. He
Yeah.
made a mistake.
and
And
that
it's not a
kinda,
big
you know,
deal.
that culture creates that young lawyer gets older and becomes an old lawyer, and then he is a
Right.
jerk to the other young lawyer.
Yeah.
Not
that's right.
not to say that lawyers, it should be overlooked if lawyers come unprepared
Sure.
or if they're constantly making mistakes or anything like that. But yeah, that I think I'm happy to say is something that I've seen less and less
Right.
of.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well,
And,
even
yeah.
with the, you know, our thing that we host, the GTLA, Georgia Trial Lawyers Association of Augusta, once a month, and you know, we have attorneys that we're competing against, and we share stuff with them. They share with us. We give ideas to them. They give ideas to us, and from what I have heard, it didn't seem that was the way it was when you were coming through.
No, they didn't help you at all. And I think that's a really good development in our community, that the lawyers share information. But to finish that question about the judges and changes, we have judges that want to work with the lawyers to help get cases done fairly. And they relate to the lawyers. They come and speak at our luncheons. They give us information. They call us, like, say, for example, recently we went to electronic calendar calls with a certain judge, and he calls me up and he asks me about it. And he wants to know what I think about it. And I give him my views. That didn't exist before.
All right.
Just did not exist.
Right.
And it's a very, very good relationship to help get cases done.
And so
we have a great bench now. We have a great group of judges.
So, for us now to go to trial, it takes a lot. It takes a long time, and the judges certainly help try to get those cases resolved so you don't have a trial, because a trial, somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. If it's in mediation, both parties can be somewhat happy. But my point, I guess, would be, now you may only have a couple of trials a year.
Right.
Y'all, when you were coming up, you might have a couple of trials a day. I mean, I know you've probably had it at least 2-3 days in a row, correct?
Yeah. Well, the problem was before, the state and defense weren't required to share information, so you were basically walking in there with only a half a case.
Right.
Oh my God.
They would prevent you from having access to the witnesses. The witnesses that you needed to interview to make good decisions on behalf of your client wouldn't call you back. They certainly wouldn't meet with you.
And you couldn't mandatorily make them meet with you?
Well, you could subpoena them, but then you got to put them on the stand in front of the jury. You don't know. No, you couldn't. And it's kind of like, and on the civil side, it was a similar kind of experience. It's kind of like George Hall said, nobody made any decisions about what to do with any case until it was about to be tried in front of the jury.
Right.
So none of the safeguards that we have today, pushing the case forward, pretrial hearings, all that, mediations, existed.
Yeah.
So everything just kept backing up on the civil side. And on the criminal side, they couldn't get anything resolved because nobody would share information.
Sure.
You know, in other words, it'd be really nice to know if they caught your client on video doing something wrong.
So you would find that out at trial?
At trial,
And then that's
because
horrible,
it wasn't Brady. It didn't help you.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't something that they were required to disclose.
That's really different than how it is now.
and we wonder why he's so good at winging it.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
he had to practice law
He had to
that
do
way
it that
for
way for years. Yeah.
My gosh. Well, Dad, before we have a limited time here, but I want to ask you a series of questions. First of all, what do you find most rewarding about being an attorney?
I think just helping people can't help themselves.
Yeah.
And really memorable results.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Okay. So, I've watched you try cases a bunch. What are some of them that stick out to you as being sort of the most memorable, most fun type cases to try?
Probably On the civil side, one that resulted in a $3,500 verdict.
Big money.
Watch out.
But it was a little girl that was in the grocery store, and she turns a corner in the grocery store, and she slips in a big, wet, mopped area, recently mopped area. All the employees said that she was running and tried to, kind of slide through the wet, soapy floor. And that's why she busted her head. We were just trying to get the emergency room bill paid, which was about $400. Yeah, $400. And the adjuster offered $300. And so I wrote him a letter. I said, I'd rather spit on $300 than take $300. And we tried the case, and I used a technique that I learned in law school. We did a lot of trial work in my senior year. And they had 5 witnesses. So I took witness 1 and had witness 1 give me a detailed account about what occurred. Then I took witness 2 and I just changed one fact about what witness 1 said. And they would say, yeah, that's true. And then the next one I changed another fact. Yeah, that's true. Next one I changed another fact.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. So they'd all come back there wondering they'd all go back out in the hall wondering about what the other one said.
And they had the rule of sequestration at the time.
That's right. Okay. That's right. So then with the 5th witness, I said, look, these other 4 witnesses have now told the truth, told the whole truth. And they didn't change any of the facts about what they saw or the circumstances. You understand that? Yeah, and I said, there's a court reporter sitting right there. She's taking everything down that you say. You understand that? And you're under oath. You understand that? You know you can go to jail for 7 years if you lie in this courtroom. He said, yeah. And I said, the little girl didn't run slide in the soapy water, did she? He said, no. So
that's great.
So that was helping people.
Yeah.
That was good. Tommy Tucker, really good lawyer around here. He saw that trial and I don't know if you're ever going to make any money, but that was good. That was good.
Tommy's a good guy.
Yeah.
I like him a lot.
Yeah. So there's been a number of others. The last criminal case that I did, I thought was very memorable, very difficult to do because of the circumstances. He was accused of shooting one guy in the back of the head, another guy in the shoulder, another guy 2 times in the waist, and 2 girls in the back. So when he hired me to represent him, he says, "You got to help me. You got to help me."
He sounded like he needed.
Yeah. And so we did our work, and we were able to show that he was a really nice guy. He had a license to carry his gun. He was surrounded by thugs and thugettes in the dark. And when the shooting started, the only thing that happened that nobody expected was a good guy won.
Yeah.
And Sean did the case with me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think he was surprised I didn't want to go out and party all night, but I was tired.
I bet.
I was already done.
Not only that, but the people that he shot, they weren't the nicest folks.
No, they weren't.
They were, and we had to be escorted. I was working as a paralegal, I think, at the time of that one or something to that effect, and we had to be escorted out by the police every night because of the threats that were occurring. So I think it was a good idea to get out of the criminal side of it.
Yeah. I mean, so that those are enjoyed. I think the stuff we're doing now. I mean, so that those are watching our podcast. We're trying to present, and to watching our podcast. We're trying to present and try cases at a very different level. I'd say maybe the top 1% of lawyers
cases,
right,
try cases the way we do now, because we're thinking and planning on a different plane. We're not just saying, well, I got 5 witnesses to to say a particular fact. We think about how it's going to be presented, what words to use, how to use the words, when to use the words, and it's really effective. So.
Yeah.
Well, I also think, Vic, one of the things that you wouldn't say, but I certainly will, is that you've changed a lot of laws for the betterment, and I think that's something to be very proud of, and I'm certainly proud of it working with you. And there's been, I mean, just from the time I've been with you, I know 10 or 11 different aspects of certain cases that have created new law, and for the folks watching, it's not necessarily a law that you put into legislation, so it's case law, and but it's changed what is the rule, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. So for those out there that are watching, how did Victor Hawk change the law? Well, there are statutes, and there's something called what's called common law or case law, and the court sometimes will, based on a good argument, change the way in which they interpret. Like, for instance, you should follow at a reasonable distance. Okay, well, what is reasonable? Well, that's where the case law. The statute says you should follow at a reasonable distance. The case law comes in behind that statute and fills in those gaps as to what is, under the circumstances, a reasonable distance. Should factors to consider are the location of the road. Are you in front of a school?
Is it raining?
Is it raining?
Yeah, all that.
Traffic conditions, all that stuff, right? Well, the court will consider those certain things. But you have an effective lawyer, they can make an argument for other things to be considered. And the whole idea is to make the law more equitable, more fair, and to do justice in whatever situation that is. And so to actually improve upon what was there existing before is a great achievement by any lawyer. So,
and
congratulations.
It comes with the territory.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Y'all are doing the same thing. You just don't realize.
I haven't quite got there yet. But, last question. Is there a case that you wish you could go, if you could pick one case and go back and redo it, what would that be?
Yeah, that's the Rwanda trip.
Yeah.
I would have done that one differently. We got what the vast majority of lawyers thought was a great result in a bad case. Mm-hmm. But I failed to lean on the victim's mother hard enough, because I think she was involved in the injury to the victim. But
well, I'll just say this:
when you look at it in hindsight,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: I was around her and all that, and I think you did a fantastic job. I'm with everybody else saying you got a fantastic result, and it just comes with the territory. It's not the result you want, but it's still a good result, and you always want to do great.
Sure.
Yeah. I got to bring up one more for him. Was the trip was a criminal case?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So since you did a criminal one, what's the civil one that you have? And I'm just going to prep you. This might not be the one that you most regret or anything, but you've told me the story about a bunch of money on the table and you're begging the client to take it.
Oh, God, that hurt. The Sethi case. Oh, my goodness.
All right, just so y'all know out there. All right, this is part of public record.
Yeah. This is another case that I should not have taken, but this was a person that was brilliant. He was a very smart engineer, and it was a national origin discrimination claim. And basically, he was treated differently because he was Indian. All the evidence that came in during the trial on behalf of, I think it was Georgia Power, was that, yes, he's a brilliant engineer, but he's a pain in the butt to work with. And nobody wanted to work with him. He was a Trema. And then, yeah. And
I don't know if we'll be able to keep that in there.
Yeah, we can exclude that. Anyway, so we go through the trial, and I'm telling him we need to work it out. Mm-hmm. And the other lawyer is saying, "Look, we will pay you $75,000, and we know him. He will not take a check." So in this briefcase, this is early in my career, $75,000 is $75,000
right there.
Right there. And this is a bench trial. This is a judge deciding the case.
Yeah, it's even worse.
So I'm trying to get him to take the $75,000. The judge's clerk is coming back. He said, "Are you engaging in settlement negotiations?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yes, we are." Yes,
She's trying to give you a hint.
yeah, trying to give me a hint. So, so we go on for another 45 minutes. I said, the judge is letting you know you need to settle this case.
Right.
It's $75,000. And he wouldn't do it no matter what. Judge's clerk comes back. "Have you got it settled yet?" "No, sir, we don't have it settled." "Well, you have 10 minutes. That was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I was waiting and couldn't get him to change his mind no matter what. And then when I heard that doorknob turn, oh my God. It was one of the most gut-wrenching things I ever experienced practicing law because I was so poor.
And you knew what was coming.
Oh, yeah.
You knew I
knew what the judge was going to do. And basically found for Georgia Power. We got 0.
Oh, nice.
Georgia Power walked out of that courtroom with $75,000 in a little briefcase that they were going to give to me with the briefcase.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this: if the decision maker, whether that be a judge or a jury, is telling you, "Hey, you better settle this case," guess what? You better settle the case.
Yeah.
Because that means you about to lose.
That's right. That's right. It's going to happen soon.
So, if there are any would-be lawyers out there thinking about embarking on a career in the law, do you have any sort of last words of wisdom before they start their journey?
If they're going to do a solo practice, if I were them, I would go to the nearest technical or college school that teaches finance or management of businesses, and take a few courses. I think the graveyard of lawyers are filled with those who didn't know how to run a business. We're not given any instruction in that regard. We're just not.
Yep.
And like when I started,
and when you're starting out, you don't have money to hire somebody to be able to do it. That's right. You just don't.
Yeah, Terry Lydon gave me my first office. He said, "There's a desk, there's a phone. When you earn some money, you can pay me rent." And I'll be forever indebted to him.
Yeah. Terry's a great guy.
Great guy. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for today and for our episode of the Layman's Law School. Join us next time, and we'll see you soon.